People need to hear this because there are so many elements of, I just got finished listening to the 4-Hour Work Week, and I was really enthralled with the first probably like 5 chapters. I'm like, this guy's got it. I'm on it. I live every day like I'm retired, all this concept, right? And at the end, I'm like, this is not actually the way that's going to get me to where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a huge element of that is that people are not willing to put in the time or put it in pace with where they can actually get, right? They're constantly either outrunning themselves and they're running themselves in circles, which then puts them into a state of overwhelm and defeat and burnout, or they're just slow. They're not that sticky note concept to where they're going to go. They just simmer in ideation land and that plan isn't there for them. How do we help people execute?
Yeah. Again, you got to be scared out of your freaking mind.
Just go back to being scared, people.
Yeah. Like, this is so simple. And the reason people are meandering around is because they're not pulling out their wallet.
Yeah, that's
and
huge.
Investing in themselves. If you were to hire a $50,000 coach, like I did for public speaking, like when I hired Myron Golden to train me on public speaking, love him too. I had to shell out his $155,000 mastermind. He gives you a $100K scholarship where he'll do a joint venture with you on one of your events to pay for that. And, you know, I had to shell out $55K like upfront for him. I had to, I do that over 10 times a year with, you know, what I spend on personal development. And like, that's it. When you spend money on yourself, on personal development, on courses, on mentors, it creates the desire. It's called pain of payment. So psychologically, pain of payment is what people call buyer's remorse.
Right.
And what most people don't see is the other side of buyer's remorse, which is called motivation of reward.
Ooh,
so when you spend money on something that can benefit your life, people look at that as buyer's remorse. They don't understand they are more motivated than ever. At the point when you've spent money on something to benefit your life, you are more motivated than ever, than anything else, even more motivated than a public commitment. You're more motivated than something in your calendar. Number one at the top of the list is pain of payment. What you spend money on, you value, right? The heart follows the pocketbook, okay? The pocketbook does not follow the heart. The heart follows the pocketbook. What you invest resources, think about this. 10,000 years ago when we were in an ice age, okay, resources were all we had to trade. We had animals, we had utensils. I'm going to trade you 2 of my whatevers for 3 of your whatevers, right? And we had to give up resources for the hope of the resources we get in exchange having a higher return than the resources that we gave up. That is commerce, right?
Right.
And then the dollar bill, exactly. Then the dollar bill gets invented. And now the same thing is happening with our lives. We now are giving up resources. Now, here's the problem. 97% of currency is digital now. So there's no real cathartic experience behind spending money. It's like boring now, right? So that's what I think is, I'll give one example, and I'm hammering on this one point because it'll have the biggest impact on your listeners over everything else. Is the size of your commitments will determine the size of your actions, will determine the size of your results. And I'll give you one last example on this. And we talked about this in some of my masterminds. If you were to have just spent your entire life savings buying a business, as an example, if you're in business and you go out and you spend, let's say, I don't know, $1 million to buy another business, $10 million to buy another business, right? You shell out all of this money, right? How likely is it that you're going to be yawning the day of you making that investment?
Not.
Right?
Not.
You're going to be like, I got to make this work, right? If you just spent $500,000 on an event and scheduled the date and everything's set in stone, there's no time to not be productive because you must must make it work. You are pot committed. There is no looking back. Back up against the wall, no plan B. There's no such thing as plan B, by the way. There's plan A, there's plan A, there's plan A, and there's plan A. They're all plan A, because plan B signifies that the second plan is going to be not so good of a plan. You need 5 plan A's. There's no such thing as plan B. So 1 target, 5 plan A's, burn the ships.
Burn the ships is my favorite. And I think as you're saying this, I'm trying to put it like tangible for someone who's like, can't process $10 million or they can't any of that. Even if you're doing something, I take women on international retreats around the world. And I, even though we're doing like heart and head work, I have to put an adrenaline oriented experience multiple times throughout the time. I do not tell them where we're going. I do not tell them what we're doing. I don't do any of that until they get there. Then they think I'm batshit bonkers, right? And they're like, what are you having me do? Some of these people are going ziplining or 4-wheeling or cliff jumping or any of these things that they've never done in their entire life. But when you have all of the equipment on you, someone has already even made the investment on your behalf, and they're now exampling it for you. And they're like, watch, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to be okay. And everyone's like, woo, when they get on the other side of that experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is no plan B. You're at the top of the zip line. You must go the mile distance across the huge chasm that you're about to see. And on the other side is such joy, conviction, as you mentioned earlier, and belief in their self. Because I can believe in you all day long, Bill, but until I believe that I am capable, there's no way that this investment is going to happen. And so when I think about people associated to money, they want their business to thrive and flourish, and they want all these clients, and they want all this growth, and they are not willing to invest in their own growth. And so my, complete conversation with them usually goes like this: why would someone pay you if you aren't willing to pay yourself?
Like if you want to sell an expensive coaching program and you haven't bought an expensive coaching program, stop trying to sell an expensive coaching program.
You're never going to believe in it.
Yeah.
It just is not going to work.
Yeah.
So when customers are like, well, you're expensive, I'm like, well, how much do you plan to charge? How much do you plan to make? How is that going to work for you? Right? It's actually a really fun mind game, but until you can play it yourself, you have no grit, you have no grace even in that space when it comes especially to the coaching world.
Yeah. Like practice what you preach. Like everyone should, like in today's document, don't create social media world. Gary Vee, who I've interviewed a couple of times, like he always talks about how you document, don't create content, just document. He has videographers following him around everywhere. And I think all people, Brian Tracy, who I've interviewed a few times as well, he says, operate as though the whole world is watching you 24/7. And every action that you take is public on TV for everyone to tune into 24/7, 365. Every single thing you do, except for private activities, right?
Right.
But the point is that we are in a mode of society right now that is unlike any mode of society ever in the past, where the people who succeed the most are role model leaders. They ask nothing of their followers that they would not do themselves. And they are so transparent. What is the number one word, according to Glassdoor, that companies surveyed that have the longest standing activities shared? And it's the word transparency. The companies that stand the test of time, the leaders that stand the test of time, they are the most transparent people on planet Earth. Why are they transparent? Because they have earned the right through their habits to be themselves and be public about it and have nothing to hide. You don't wake up having nothing to hide. You earn it. You earn it through your habits.
Yeah, that's good.
So how do you start? You start now. You start now asking yourself this key question. I always ask myself this when I meditate. I did it this morning when I meditated. I always ask myself when I draw like a blank in my meditation, I ask myself, what would the 20 years older me value today? I always ask myself that question. So I'm 31 right now. What would the 51-year-old me value today? What would the 51-year-old person agree, yeah, you should have worried about that today. That was a good use of your time today. That was a valued use of your time today.